Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Her Inspired Mind podcast. This is your host, Rebecca Fillmore, and I'm happy to be here with you again. Thank you for joining me. Today, I want to talk about your identity. Before I get into this, I want to read you what the definition of identity is. So, identity is the fact of being who or what a person is. Again, identity is the fact of being who or what a person is. So your identity is essentially who you are, who you define yourself to be, or who you believe that you are. And this is important because whoever or however you identify as will greatly affect how you show up in the world because, again, it is who you are, who you believe that you are. And the first thing I want to ask you is who or what is your identity? Who do you believe you are? Who do you identify yourself as being? And I want you to really reflect on this because this is important. A lot of times people show up in the world not as who they truly are or who they believe they are, but by the labels that others have placed on them. And so you have people walking around with different labels, believing or accepting that they are who other people have said they are and not who they truly are deep down inside. For example, if you're someone who has been labeled as someone who has manic depression or bipolar disorder or schizophrenic, or there's so many different other illnesses and diseases that maybe you have been labeled as having, right? But you are not defined by the labels that others have placed upon you. And I want you to truly understand this because God made you, as He has made all of us, very unique, very special. We all have different gifts. We all have different talents. We all have different attributes that we can bring into this world. For example, in Jeremiah 1:5, it says, I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb. And I don't know, I should have brought this up, but the exact statistics, but the fact that you are even here today is a miracle because there was so many millions of probabilities of someone else who could have been here instead of you. So God knew you before He even formed you in your mother's womb. And I want you to really think about that and not take it lightly. And I understand that you've probably been through a lot in your life. And I understand that maybe you're not even enjoying life. Maybe you're feeling lost. You're feeling hopeless. And you're like, what is the point of me being alive? If I'm so special, why did God create me to suffer? Why did God put me here to be abused, to be taken advantage of, to just go through so many things that I've been through in life? And I don't even know why I'm here. And first of all, I want to tell you that I'm sorry that you've gone through the things that you've gone through in life. I personally have been through a lot of things as well. I personally have been labeled. I've been called crazy. I've been called bipolar. I've been called so many different things, right? But I don't accept the labels that others have placed upon me as who I am and my identity, because my identity is in Christ Jesus, it's in God. And when we identify ourselves with our Creator, there's so much power in that, because we are able to show up in the world more confident. We're able to show up in the world more whole, more peaceful, more loving. And then we're able to thrive even more. Because when we put our identity in things, in other people, or accepting the bad labels that people have put upon us, those are the things that lead to unhappiness, to depression, to anxiety. And I'll tell you, like before, like I'm like, oh yeah, I have anxiety. Like that's what I identified as. Like who's Rebecca? Rebecca has anxiety. But the thing is that I am not those things. I am Rebecca. And I have different qualities. I'm happy. I am joyful. I love to help other people. I try to be a light as much as I can, you know. Those are the things that I am. And so a lot of times people are attached to the negative things that people have placed upon them, or the negative labels or the bad labels that people have identified them with, and they hold on to that. And the thing is that you cannot move on in your life if you're attached to who others have said that you are, or who you thought you were, or who you used to be. You need to believe that you don't need anything exterior to tell you who you are, because God lives within each and every one of us. His spirit dwells within us. And when we go internal instead of external to look at what our identity is, there's just so much more peace that comes into your life. Like I used to, you know, go above and beyond for people, or I would do extra for them to love me, to like me. And I believed whatever they said I was, you know. If they told me I was crazy, I would start to question. I'm like, well, maybe I am crazy. Oh, the doctor said I'm bipolar, so maybe I am bipolar. Let me look up the definition of bipolar. And when I would look up the definition, then I would be like, oh yeah, that's me. But that's not me. That's not who God created me to be. I am a daughter of the Most High King. I am royalty. I am a queen. I am confident. Like I choose who I am and how I am to be defined. And the same way that I've done it, so can you. Ephesians 2:10 says, "For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." So no matter what we have gone through, no matter what our past looks like, flaws and all, God can use it all for good, all for his glory. And if you're listening to this today, I want to encourage you that if you've been labeled by having certain diseases, certain illnesses, certain mental health problems, don't allow those labels that maybe the doctors have given you, or psychologists, or whoever it is, or even your spouse, your family, your mom, your dad, they've told you that you are certain things. You don't have to accept that. Because like it says here, you are God's handiwork and you were created to do good things. So even if a lot of bad has happened in your life, even if you've done bad things in your life, you are not defined by that. That is not who you are. And I know this concept may be a little hard to understand at first, but I want to expand your mind so that as you move forward in your life and you begin to create a new life for yourself. I don't want you to stay stuck with the labels that others have given you or that you have given yourself, and accept that this is just who you are. This is how it's going to be. And there's nothing you can do about it. You can create a new identity for yourself. But again, it has to be based upon what God thinks about you, on the truth that He loves you, on the truth that He knew who you were before He formed you in your mother's womb, on the truth that, you have unique gifts and talents that He has instilled in you so that you're able to show up and give to this world. And even the bad that has happened to you, even your current circumstance, He can use that for your good, for His good, and for the good of humanity. For example, I am blind from my right eye. And I was telling my client the other day that before I used to live in this fear that eventually my one good eye was going to get so bad to the point where I would become blind from both eyes. And I used to stress about this. And so I started to practice in the dark, walking in the dark, not seeing. Like, it's just complete darkness, and I'm just walking around like, because eventually, I might be blind. But then I was like, no, like once I learned that I can create my future, I can create who I identify myself in, then I don't have to accept or believe that that's going to happen to me. So now, instead of me identifying as, or I could say I'm a blind person, right? Or just saying, you know what, I'm blind from my right eye, and just using that and using that as a crutch, basically, for people to, feel bad for me or to get certain privileges or to apply for disability, whatever the case might be. No, now I'm believing that eventually I will be able to see 2020 through both eyes. And so now that's what I tell myself in my mind. Like, I'm so thankful now that I can see clear 2020 vision through both eyes, because our minds believe what we instill in it. And whatever we tell our mind, that is what we co-create with God. And so God has given us the ability to be able to co-create with Him, as long as we find our identity in Him and who He says that we are. And so even when I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, I could have stayed stuck in that. And I'm like, I'm a woman who has fibromyalgia. I'm a woman who has depression. I'm a woman who has anxiety. But I am separate from those symptoms that I had in my body. I am separate from those symptoms that I had in my brain and the way that my brain functioned. And I was able to transform them. And I no longer identify as someone who is depressed, or someone who is anxious, or someone who is bipolar, or someone who has fibromyalgia. And, I'm not taking away from the fact that people have disabilities, they have mental health struggles, there's so much, right? I could go on the list of things that I had, right? But I understood that I was not defined and I didn't have to stay stuck in those circumstances. So I began to imagine a different future for myself, not only externally, but first and foremost within me. So I began to change my thought process. Instead of being anxious and worrying and overthinking, I began to calm my mind and speak, I am calm, I am confident, I am peaceful. And so now that's the state that I live in. So what I want you to take from this is that it doesn't matter what your past circumstances were or what your current circumstances are, whether you're battling thoughts in your mind or certain illnesses. And I mean, I know that there's certain illnesses that maybe you can't get rid of, but you don't have to let that define how you're going to live your life. Like I love this man. He has no limbs. Like he doesn't have any arms, he doesn't have any legs. But this man didn't allow that to stop him from living life fully. I'm telling you, he has bungee jumped, he has scuba dived, he drives, he has a family, he has kids. I mean, he's a motivational speaker, and he just came to my mind. I need to look up his name. I think it's David something, Kirkovich or something like that. But he's so inspiring. Like he didn't allow the doctors, they were like, his parents told him, your son's never going to be able to do anything. He's just going to lay in the bed and do nothing. But no, God had a greater purpose. So even in his inabilities, or even in the things that maybe he doesn't have that most people in the world have, he has made great things happen through his life to make a bigger impact in the world. So we are not defined by our current circumstances or our inabilities or our deficiencies. We can do anything that we put our minds to. We can identify ourselves as greater than the things that people have labeled us, as long as we put our identity in alignment with who God says we are. So I hope that this is encouraging to you, and it helps you to dream bigger, to think bigger, that you have the ability to create a new future for you. You have the ability to show up in this world more authentically. You have the ability to make a bigger impact in this world with your story, with you being who you are. And I had to share this message with you because so many people are accepting false identities by the labels that others have put in them, false identities because they want to fit in with other people. And so they're just, living a lie. But when you put your hope and your focus and you understand what God thinks about you, it is such a game changer. So take the time to reflect on this. Take the time to dig in deep within yourself. Pray to God and ask him to show you who you truly are and who he wants you to be and how he wants you to walk out your life. Because you're here for a reason. You're here for a purpose. You're not here just to be here, just to exist, just to survive. No, you're created to thrive, to shine in this world. And so don't allow anyone to tell you who you are, and focus on who God tells you who you are and live in that. So if this was helpful to you, please share it on your Instagram stories, on your Facebook. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And also leave me a star rating or review. You can leave me a more detailed review on Apple Podcast. And if you would like for me to speak on anything, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me at inspireherwithin@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll talk to you guys soon. God bless.